What is going on, guys? My name is Noble. Welcome to another video. We are going to start the new year with a controller settings video. Now this one isn't going to be detailed, this one isn't going to be elaborate, this isn't some crazy controller setting that is going to have you set your aim assist off like crazy. But for me, being a mouse and keyboard player ever since MW19 and only recently switching to controller, you know, it's at this point, whether you believe it or not, in my opinion, you know, Call of Duty has been a strong controller game just due to how strong aim assist has increasingly become over the years. And ideally for me, I don't know, maybe it's a skill issue, but unfortunately as a mouse and keyboard player, I am completely struggling. You know, I'm going from only getting 5 to 6 kills a match in Warzone, specifically even in Resurgence, right? And then as soon as I switched to controller, you know, in the beginning it was a little bit hard, but after a while getting used to it, going back, because originally, you know, majority of us are controller mates going up. I only switched to MKB when MW19 came out. Now I'm starting to drop 10 plus 15 plus kills, and I don't know, it's just been stress-free. And I figured, hey, you know, let's make a controller setting videos. Let's talk about some of the things that would help beginner controller players, as well as anybody who wants to understand specific miscellaneous settings like dead zone inputs, because I feel like if you know how to hone in your regular sensitivity, your ADS sensitivity, and as well as your dead zone, and make it work with how you hold the controller and how you use your thumbs to control your movement and to control the recoil when it comes to shooting the gun up, that pull down, understanding these specific settings can make it a lot more easier for you to use controller. Even though it already is easy, it's gonna give you additional aim, it's gonna give you additional aim control, and it's gonna have you be able to trace your targets a lot more easier. Now before we get into the rest of the video to talk about the controller settings, if you want to hashtag bring back honest gaming, please drop a sub to the channel, drop a like to the video. Let's start 2025 strong. We already hit the 1,000 subscriber goal. We are going to hit the 4,000 hours of watch time in order to get this channel monetized. So if you can, please drop a like, drop a sub, and let's get started. Alright, so like I said, I'm not going to go into every single controller setting. I'm just going to go into some of the basics, like your vertical and horizontal sensitivity, what your ADS sensitivity is going to be, as well as your dead zone inputs. I think honing these 3 specific factors in is really going to help you with your controllers and give you more of that control on your aim. So starting with horizontal and vertical, I did keep them the same at 1.20, 1.20. For some, it might be considered too low. For some, you know, it might be, you know, they might have to go even lower. It really depends on where you start in your controller journey. For me, I've main controller, and as well as everybody else, main controller growing up with Call of Duty ever since the Call of Duty 2. Technically not Call of Duty 1, because Call of Duty 1 was on PC. Don't forget that. But for me, being recently going back to the sticks, I wanted to start very low at 1.20. Usually the rule of thumb is that the lower the sensitivity that you have, the better it is going to be from overshooting your targets and giving you an easier time tracing your targets during long range engagements. But the thing about having lower sensitivity is that when you get that low, when it comes to up close fights, and especially against a player who is very good on movement, who is going to be trying to break your cameras, sometimes the 1.2 might just be too low for you and you won't be able to trace fast enough. So what I recommend is go as low as you can comfortably, and until you can get better control on the sticks, that's where you can increase your sensitivity. Because if you just try to go super high sense from the beginning, you're gonna have a very hard time trying to trace your target. You're gonna overshoot them, you're gonna undershoot them, because you're not gonna understand how much pressure you need to apply for the sticks. And then I do want to add a disclaimer, I am using a Scuff Envision controller. Now this is a very fancy controller. Before this, I used to use the Xbox Elite 2, so I'm just a fan of any controller that has paddles. But hey, I figured I've been playing Elite 2 for so long, might as well get a little bougie and just try out the Scuff Envision. Now mind you, Scuff Envision, you could try it out, but remember, the Scuff Envision Pro is for PC use only. So if you are on console, I think there is another version of the Scuff controller that's going to have a very similar layout to this that you can use for console. That's a console exclusive. Alright, so I want to go over the meat and potatoes of this video, and we are going to talk about dead zone inputs. Now, for a lot of people, I'd say a good majority of the player base, they tend to get a little scared or worried about trying to work with the dead zones because it can get a little confusing. But honestly, to really simplify it, dead zones is controlling the amount of pressure that is required to push on any direction of the sticks before the game actually triggers that movement. So for example, if you increase the dead zones, right, it's gonna take a lot more push on the actual stick itself before it triggers that input. So you have a smaller dead zone, you can basically breathe on the controller and the game will register the movement, which ideally you don't want to do that, because for controllers, when they start to develop stick drift, when you have it at a zero value, that's where the stick drift starts to occur, where you're not even touching it, but because the controller is starting to have stick drift, it's going to start registering that ghost input. Ideally, that's what originally dead zones were only used for before, is just to counter stick drift, but now dead zones can be used to refine your aim. Now on the left stick dead zone, I did not change it. It's pretty standard: left stick minimum 15, left stick max 90. Reason being is it really doesn't take that much movement on the stick itself to register anything, whether you're trying to register movement for rotational aim assist, whether you're trying to register movement to make sure your attack sprint is always active, right? You want to have that full 100% input registration. For me, I have a heavy thumb, so ideally, whether I do it at a minimum, at very low dead zones or very high dead zones, I'm still gonna hit that movement regardless, just because I'm very heavy on my left thumb. But I would highly recommend, and this is just my opinion, guys, everyone has their own controller settings, everyone has their own dead zones that makes them feel comfortable in using it. So for me, what I did is, for my right stick, I did a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 99. Reason why the right stick is a little bit lower is because now I can register more finer movements when it comes to countering recoil. So for example, if I pull the sticks down on left and right, okay, you notice I'm applying about the same, or here, I'm applying about the same amount of pressure for both thumbs. I'm trying to do the same, but it's hard because my left, like I said, is heavy. But you notice how the pull down was more on the left compared to the right on the dead zone. So if you look again. So the reason why I have the right stick as a smaller dead zone is because I want more refined movement to pull down when you're countering recoil. Because the thing about countering recoil is that when players tend to pull down too much when they're trying to counter recoil. Now if you throw in the fact that they have to trace a target moving left or right, and at the same time still pulling down to counter recoil, they're gonna tend to overshoot their targets or just completely miss their targets, because they're trying to find that amount of pressure to control the recoil, and sometimes they pull it down too much, thinking that that's going to control the recoil when they're overdoing it. They don't need to be that aggressive when doing that pull down for the recoil control. But remember, guys, by adjusting this specific setting, it's not, it's not adding more aim assist. What this is going to do is that it's going to allow you to stay within the aim assist bubble. If you guys don't know what the aim assist bubble is, just imagine the target, right? If this is the target, there is an outline on the outside of the target in which, when the crosshairs cross over into that bubble, that's where the aim slowdown happens. Now, reason why we adjust the dead zone inputs is because when players are trying to trace this target and at the same time countering recoil, so they're pulling down and trying to follow left or trying to follow right, because of how aggressive the right stick is and how their thumb is aggressive or heavy on the right stick, they're going to tend to pull down too much, where the aim goes out of the bubble this way, or out of the bubble left, or out of the bubble right. Essentially, it's having them a harder time staying inside that aim assist bubble. And that's what controller players mean, or when you hear players say, hey, controller players are abusing aim assist. No, not necessarily. They have their dead zones adjusted so well that they have an easier time staying in that aim assist bubble to have aim assist work for them. Same as doing rotational aim assist, right? To keep rotational aim assist, you have to make sure your character is strafing left or right. You can do that by some players. What they would do is on the left stick, they'll even bring the dead zone minimum down to a 0 too if they don't have stick drift, just so that even though they might be standing still to shoot a target, they can micro move their analog just so that they can keep having their rotational aim assist, because their players are strafing left and right. And I do want to show a couple more settings for the aiming advanced setting, just so that you guys know. For the ADS sensitivity transition, I did instant, and then the aim response type I said standard, because with standard, that's where you're going to have the strongest slowdown on your aim assist bubble. Now the thing about standard is that when you have a strong slowdown on the aim assist bubble, you need to understand how much pressure you need to apply when moving your stick, because the slowdown is so hard that it actually stops you from moving your crosshairs on target. Some people, they think if they're pushing enough on the sticks, it's going to line them up on the target. No, because of the standard slowdown, you need to overcompensate and pull a little bit more towards target. But that's going to take over time. That's going to take you understanding your thumb pressure, because like I said, everyone's thumb pressure and finger sensitivity is different. For some it's heavy, for some it's light, and you need to find a way and test it yourself to understand where your dead zone input needs to be for you to trace better, for you to apply exact pressure to counter recoil, and to apply exact pressure to overcome the extreme slowdown from standard aim assist, so that you can stay on target a lot more longer. All of these settings that I mentioned and I'm talking about is to ensure you stay in that bubble. That's all it really is. But that's all the controller settings that I have for this video. Like I said, I didn't want to make it too long. Other controller players out there, if you have any recommendations, or if you want to show your settings that you feel is going to be really good for players to try out because it really helped you out, hey, drop it and comment down below. And as a final reminder, if you do want to hashtag bring back honest gaming, please drop a like to the video, drop a sub to the channel, and I will see you guys on the next video. All right, happy New Year's, take care.